to everyone who has joined. My name is Emily Sides, and I am a financial advisor and partner with the Sides Wealth Advisory Group. If you don't know who I am, you might know someone else on the Sides Wealth Advisory Group team. Throughout this presentation, if you have questions, there will be time at the end that I can answer those, or if you have questions offline, you can reach out to either myself or any of my partners, and we would be more than happy to help you. Today, we're going to be covering the basics of budgeting, and our idea and our design with these presentations is that they're going to be pretty short, 15 to 20 minutes, a high-level overview of the topic, hopefully providing you some information and some food for thought. So today we're going to cover budgeting. These are going to be quarterly presentations, so our next presentation will be in the middle of July, covering another financial wellness topic. So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to start by addressing how to create a budget. We're going to talk about ways to move forward and implement that budget. We're going to talk about spending habits, tracking our cash, and then at the end, we'll touch on how myself and people in financial services might be able to help you on this topic. So let's start with creating a budget. I think that the idea of budgeting is pretty simple. You know, we're talking about how much money is coming into your household versus how much you're spending it. And I think the idea and the concept of budgeting is pretty simple. I think the hard part is actually implementing it into our daily lives. You know, our lives are busy. You know, they're taken up by friends, work, family, travel, other activities, and focusing on finances and implementing a budget can sometimes be challenging. So hopefully today, this will give you some food for thought on how you can maybe implement a budget into your own life. You know, people budget for different reasons. Maybe you've never budgeted before, and you just want to implement some discipline on your finances. Maybe it's for a purchase. You know, maybe you're buying a home, maybe you're buying a car or a boat, something fun like that, a vacation home. Maybe it's saving for college for your kids or your grandkids, a job or a career change, or maybe it's something as simple as wanting to establish an emergency fund or saving for retirement. So we're going to talk about all of those things today. There's no right or wrong way to implement a budget to achieve these goals. And of course, all of these different goals are going to be tackled differently and over different periods of time through your budget. So step one is really starting with your goals. Why are you creating this budget? And I think it's really important that we write those goals down. You have two examples listed on this slide here. You know, a goal could be as simple as having $1,000 saved in an emergency fund by June 1st, or it could be paying off $5,000 of credit card debt in 18 months. But I think it's really helpful to, number one, write them down because it means it's real and it's something that, a goal that you have to work towards. And number two, it's much easier then to kind of figure out how we can tackle these goals. So pretty simple, but you divide the dollar amount by the number of months that you're trying to save for this goal. And that is how you can figure out that monthly amount that you're going to need to save for in your budget. Next is knowing your income. So when we talk about budgeting, we want to know how much money is coming into our household each month. Very simple. If you look at how much money is deposited into your bank account or what shows on your pay stub, very easy way to figure out your income, your monthly income. If you are married, you want to factor in your spouse's income as long as you handle your finances jointly. But we want to make sure we know how much in income we have coming in each month. Again, we want to focus on net pay, not gross pay. So we want to focus on that number after all of your deductions have come off of your paycheck. Step three is then knowing your monthly expenses. And this can be a little bit more challenging to figure out. We want to factor in all of those recurring expenses. Some examples are things like grocery, rent, and mortgages, all debt payments like car loans, student loans, credit cards, your cell phone and cable bill, entertainment. And it's also important to include those occasional recurring expenses. Maybe they don't happen every month. Maybe it's every other month, maybe it's every 6 months, but it is an expense that you do need to pay for. Some of those examples would be like doctor's visits and car insurance. We want to make sure we're factoring in all of those things. A great way to do this is by looking at prior bank and credit card statements. That gives you a really good idea of what your spending looks like. If you average out your last 6 months of those credit card or bank statements, it's a really good indicator of an average of what your monthly expenses look like. And then step 4 is kind of creating that budget. So we want to look at our monthly income. We want to subtract our living expenses from that we just talked about. And then we want to subtract those financial goals that we planned for in step 1. And then the goal is that you have some money left over in your budget, because we do know that things come up. Some months you spend a little bit more than others. So we want to have a little bit of wiggle room at the end. If you have a negative number at the end, we're going to have some work to do. And there might be some adjustments that need to be made, which takes us to step 5. And maybe that is revisiting your goals and expenses. So if you do have a negative number when you're looking at your budget, we're going to have to make some changes. And it's not feasible to have that negative number to achieve your financial goals. You're going to end up accumulating debt somewhere else and then needing to address that goal later on. So we want to prioritize. Maybe you need to change your goals. Maybe you need to change the timeline for your goals. Instead of saving $1,000 in an emergency fund by June, maybe it's by September or October. Maybe it's paying off credit card debt in 20 months instead of 18 months. But adjusting your goals is one easy way to make that budget work. Another way that you could think about this is maybe you find a part-time job somewhere else to increase your income to get these goals achieved as quickly as possible, if that is ultimately what you want to do. Or maybe it's just prioritizing your spending and being a little bit more conscious about where your money is being spent every month. So that's kind of how we build a budget. Now let's talk about 4 ways to move forward. Maybe you don't know where to start. So a good starting point on if you've never budgeted before is building an emergency fund if you don't already have one. The goal behind an emergency fund is that we have 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved. That's going to look a little bit different for everybody, but 3 to 6 months on average is what we want to have saved in an emergency fund. We want to keep this in a separate account from our checking account. We oftentimes like to see an emergency fund placed in a savings account, somewhere where you're not moving money in and out constantly. This is an emergency fund. The idea behind an emergency fund is that this is something that you can use if your car breaks down unexpectedly. Maybe you need to replace an appliance in your kitchen that you didn't know was going to break. So that's what an emergency fund is designed for, those unexpected expenses. So we want to keep it in a separate account from our checking. Oftentimes, especially now, in the last 18 months, we've seen interest rates go up, and we are now able to earn a little bit of money in those types of accounts. So in some high yield savings accounts, you can earn a little bit of interest in an account like this. So that's one easy way one easy thing that you can do in your budgeting is building that emergency fund over time. Maybe you give yourself 6 months to work towards saving those 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And again, looking for a savings account or some sort of high interest bearing account to keep that money in. So how much do Americans have in an emergency fund? And this is pretty interesting. So 25% of Americans have 6+ months of living expenses in an emergency fund. 19% have 3 to 5 months. 51%, so over half, have fewer than 3 months. 25% don't have any emergency fund, and 5% don't know. Another way to move forward in our budgeting is paying ourselves first. So I mentioned it briefly at the beginning when we were talking about goals, but maybe one of your goals is saving more or prioritizing saving for retirement. There are different ways that you can save money for retirement, different types of accounts. We have IRAs listed here and employer-sponsored retirement accounts. I'm going to start with employer-sponsored retirement accounts. It's going to be probably the easiest way for you to save money for yourself for retirement. And what that is if you've ever heard of a 401k or a 403b plan offered through your employer, that is what an employer-sponsored retirement account is. It's very, very easy if you aren't currently signed up for one to save in an account like this through your employer if they are offering it. It's easy because it's done through payroll. It's automatic payroll deduction that goes right out of your paycheck and into a retirement account in your name. There's oftentimes easy to use investment options that will invest your money based on your age in an account like that as well. So it's a great resource for you to be saving money for yourself in those employer-sponsored retirement accounts. If you don't have access to an employer-sponsored retirement account, another retirement savings vehicle that you could utilize is called an IRA or an individual retirement account. So maybe you don't have that 401k, or maybe you are maxing out your 401k. You can also save in an IRA. Same tax advantages that you would get in that 401k or that 403b is found in that IRA. But again, it's just something done through a bank account instead of your payroll in a retirement account there. We get asked too all the time, and this is probably for a much bigger discussion, but how much should you be saving for retirement? So when we talk about our financial goals, this is something good to hit on. Generally, we like to see people saving anywhere from 10 to 15% of their income for retirement. And that's a goal that you can work towards and you can budget towards. So maybe right now you're not saving that much, and that's okay. But work your way up towards saving close to 10 to 15% of your pay. That's typically what we need to see people save to have a successful retirement. Another way to move your budget forward, and this is a tough one, is to be a little bit more conscious of where you're spending your money and maybe not eat out so much. So you can see on the top right there, this statistic that says the average American spends about $3,700 eating out each year, which amounts to $300 a month. That's a lot of money that's spent on eating out. I think we all like to eat out. I know I do, and I do it quite a bit, but being a little bit more conscious of when you're eating out and just limiting it a little bit can go a long way when you're planning for your budget. Planning is really important. Limit and plan when you're going to be eating out and stick to it. Cook at home more, plan out your dinner menus, meal prep for your lunches. If you do have a job, meal prep those lunches instead of ordering out for lunch. Again, making a list and sticking to it is really helpful. And then lastly, on this section here, finding cheaper gas and entertainment. It kind of goes back to what I just talked about, but being a little bit more conscious of where you're spending your money. So instead of just finding the closest gas station to fill up your gas tank, maybe you start using an app instead and find a gas station that might be a little bit further away, but is going to save you a couple dollars when you fill up your gas tank. Same with entertainment. Maybe you start to be a little bit more conscious of where you're spending your money for entertainment as well. There are some apps and resources online that do a great job of getting you those best deals and making your life a little bit easier if you want to be more conscious here. So next we're going to talk a little bit about some do's and don'ts of better spending habits. So on the left-hand side of these next couple of pages, you'll see a don't, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see a do. So some of this stuff you might already know, but I don't think it hurts to hit on. We don't want to buy brand name products if we can buy a generic product that accomplishes the same thing. So this is a really easy one to do at the grocery store. We tend to buy and grab a label that looks familiar to us instead of buying the generic brand, which could save up to 50% of the cost of that product. Another do and don't is using an out-of-network ATM. So oftentimes ATMs, if they're out-of-network, are going to charge you a service fee. Just being a little bit more conscious of where you're using your ATMs and making sure that there isn't a service fee when we're using an ATM. Buying lottery tickets. This one can be tempting, thinking that buying a lottery ticket might be able to get us out of a sticky situation in a pinch, but taking that money instead and paying yourself through retirement accounts or towards whatever financial goals you're working towards is a good idea. And then this is one that's pretty tough for me is, having too many apps and subscriptions. This is something that very easily can add up over time. And I know I'm guilty of it. We have all of these different streaming services that we have access to now, Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, whatever it might be. All of those subscriptions cost money. So maybe we limit some of those subscriptions that we were using to save and work towards those financial goals. And same with applications. I know that you can download apps on your phone right now, and you might get a free trial on that application for the first week or maybe the first month, but then they're going to start charging you a monthly fee after that free trial period is up. And oftentimes we forget to delete that app after that free trial. So being a little bit more conscious about those applications and those subscriptions is can be really helpful in working towards our financial goals. And then last, impulse shopping. Again, another thing I'm guilty of is impulse shopping. So just being more conscious of where you're spending your money. I know something that I tend to try to do is implement a 24 to 48 hour rule. If there is something I see online that I really like and I really want, instead of just buying it because that would make me feel good immediately, I give myself 24 to 48 hours. If I'm still thinking about that product and that purchase that long after I found it initially, then maybe I can seriously consider buying it. But giving yourself some time and not making those impulse decisions is really important too. So next we're going to talk about tracking cash. So, we've talked about how to build a budget, ways to move forward in our budget, some do's and don'ts. Now we're going to talk about some ways to hold yourself accountable. First is pretty simple, is keeping a spending journal. I know that there are sites, Amazon, wherever you can find it now out there, where you can buy yourself a budgeting journal or a spending journal where you can manually log all of your spending. That can be a little bit time consuming, but I know that there are people out there that like to write things down, and so keeping a spending journal is a great way to hold yourself accountable in your budget. Maybe we go digital. There are spreadsheet programs out there on Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. They have preset budgeting spreadsheets that you can download and fill in with your own information. All can be done digitally, tracking your budget online. It's another great way to do it, and it's all typically free. Or we can download an app. There are so many applications out there now. There's a couple listed on the screen that help you do your budgeting for you. Oftentimes in these applications, you can link up a direct link to your bank account and your credit card so that these apps can track that spending and categorize it for you. You don't even have to go do it yourself. And then you can pop in and see where your spending habits fall. There is a new app out there. They're calling it the anti-budgeting app. It's called Oops. And basically, the idea is that for those people that don't want to budget, what it does is you link up your bank account, your credit card to it. It tracks your spending, and then at the end of the week, you log in once a week and you look at all those purchases you made in the prior week. And you can go in and hit Oops on any of those purchases that you regret making, and it makes you a little bit more conscious about your spending. So there are some really simple apps out there, and then there's some really detailed apps as well that really get into the weeds of creating a budget. So another great way to keep yourself accountable. And then the last way to kind of keep yourself accountable, I think this is a much bigger picture, but it's a great way to track if you're moving forward in the right direction over longer periods of time, is tracking your net worth. So your net worth is everything you own, subtracting everything you owe. So on this slide here, we have listed this individual, everything they own on the left-hand side. So you've got savings and investments, the house, retirement funds, and the car. So you can see their total assets are $390,000. Then they have some liabilities. So they have a mortgage on their house, they have student loans, they have a car loan, and they have credit card debt. And all of that totals just under $307,000. So that individual's net worth is about $80,000 right now. So if you look at your net worth and you track this maybe every 3 to 6 months, and the goal is that your net worth is going to grow and that number is going to become bigger over time. That means that you're budgeting well and you're working towards achieving those financial goals. So lastly, I'm just going to end with how financial services professionals can help you. So how can myself and how can our team step in and kind of help you manage your budget and achieve your financial goals better? So for those of you that have worked with us, this might be a little bit repetitive, and if you don't work with us directly, we can offer one-on-one advice that focuses on your personal situation and your unique needs. We really can educate you on different types of investments. Maybe we want to talk about how we can invest money in your retirement account appropriately so that you can retire early. Maybe that's a financial goal of yours, is retiring early. Or maybe a financial goal of yours is to save a certain amount by a certain age. Those types of financial goals we can certainly educate you on and help you with. We can also determine investment risk, what you feel comfortable, what type of risk you feel comfortable taking on in those types of accounts to achieve your financial goals. We have some tools that we can utilize and some software on our end that can really go into a comprehensive financial plan for yourself that kind of takes budgeting to the next level. So please feel free to utilize us as a resource when we're talking about financial goal planning and budgeting. So that kind of takes us to the end of the presentation here. We're going to open it up to questions. So we use Slido for questions. I'm going to pull up here a new slide for you if you do have any questions. What you can do is, if you have your phone in front of you and you do have a question, you can scan this QR code, you can type in the hashtag, and then you can submit a question. And we'll hang out here up until 12:30 and see if there's any questions that come in. I'm happy to answer those. Yeah, this is a great question. So should I pay down my debt first, or should I save money? So we get asked this question a lot, and this is something important. So when we talk about debt management, I would have questions for this individual's situation. I would want to know how much debt they have and the type of interest that they're paying on this debt right now. So something that we like to focus on is if it's high interest debt. So if you have, maybe it's a student loan that you're just out of college and the interest that you're paying on that is 9%. I mean, that's a lot of interest that you're paying on that debt. It might make sense to work towards paying down that debt first over saving money. If you have lower interest debt, maybe it's going to be a combination of paying off some of that debt early and saving money. And if you have no interest on that debt, then I would say probably saving money over paying off that debt would make sense. So it's going to kind of depend on your situation. Look at that interest rate and what interest you're paying on that debt first. And if it's high interest debt, then yes, absolutely work towards paying that down as quickly as you can before you start saving. What % of my budget should be saved each month? Another good question, and I'm going to have questions for this individual too on their personal situation. So we kind of want to look at how much you're saving, how much you're spending right now on some other expenses. So how much are you putting towards your mortgage and a car payment and expenses and things like that. I know I mentioned briefly early on, if we talk about just retirement, we want to be saving about 10 to 15% of our income just for retirement each month. And again, that's a goal that you should work towards. So if you're not saving that much right now, maybe you're only saving 5%. A good way to work towards increasing that is every year when you get a pay raise or every first of the year, you increase how much you're saving in your retirement account by maybe 1 or 2%. So really easy to do that in 401ks and 403bs. It can almost automatically happen. If you're not saving in a vehicle like that, you might have to manually do that. But 10 to 15% is what we want to be saving for retirement each month. Good question. Okay, what is your opinion of obtaining a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, in order to pay down higher interest debt? This kind of goes back to that first question. You know, what is the interest rate that is going to be attached to that HELOC? And if it is lower than the high interest debt that you have, then yes, I think it could make sense to go that route to manage that high interest debt. Absolutely. If you can get a lower interest rate on that HELOC than on that higher interest debt, then yes, I don't see anything wrong with that and would encourage it to manage your debt. It's a great idea. So another question here, what if my income fluctuates? What would be the best way to put aside money when I have it so I don't use it until I really need it? So if your income fluctuates, it can be a bit more challenging to budget. I think a great way to save money and set it aside if we're talking about retirement is just doing a percentage of your pay. So on those higher earning months, more money is going away. And on those lower income months, less money is going to be going away if you just do a percentage of your income. Even if this is going to be money saved aside from retirement, it's kind of the same deal. Maybe you just save a percentage of your income each month. I would again have questions for this individual's situation too. Are you saving for retirement? If you are and you want to save elsewhere, maybe we look at a non-retirement regular investment brokerage account to save money, and maybe we fluctuate. Maybe we would have a conversation every month, where are you at income-wise and how much do we want to put into this account each month? But your situation would probably have to change a little bit as far as how much you're saving each month. We have about 2 minutes left until the end here, so 2 more minutes for any questions. Is it better to pay bills down by highest percentage rate first or pay smallest bill off first? So if I'm thinking we're talking about like debt management again here. So maybe you have some different credit cards that have different interest rates attached to them. One is smaller than the amount is smaller than the other. I will say while it can feel good to pay off that small amount first, like you've accomplished something, that feeling can be good, we still want to tackle higher interest debt first, even if it's a larger amount. That is going to be the best way to get a hold of and manage that debt. All right, well, that takes us to 12:30. Thank you all for your time this afternoon. If you do have any follow-up questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or any member of our team, and we are happy to help you with your situation. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.